Hello friends, today we are going to discuss about FSMO roles. FSMO stands for Flexible Single Master Operation. If you are going to attend Windows Server admin interview or Active Directory interview, then FSMO role will be very important question. So let's learn about FSMO role in Windows Server. We know that Active Directory or AD is the central repository of all the objects in the enterprise and it stores millions of objects. In earlier days, Active Directory had some glaring flaws. Suppose if you have multiple domain controllers, then they would fight with which DC will make the changes, which domain controller will make the changes. What happens is sometimes these changes stick and sometimes not. So then Microsoft came up with last writer wins. This is the concept from Microsoft. What is this last writer wins? This last writer wins means changes which are written at last on the domain controller. That changes will be permanent and all other changes written in other domain controllers which will be discarded. This is like multi-master model. In some cases it is good, but in some cases it is not good at all. So to avoid this, Microsoft introduced single master model. Microsoft separated the responsibility of a domain controller into multiple roles. One more thing I want to tell you is that in single master model, only one domain controller in the entire directory is allowed to process the updates. Like we had in NTT 3.51 and NT 4.0 in earlier version of Windows. Their primary domain controller was responsible for the updates in given domain. So now in Active Directory we have 5 FSMO roles and we can transfer these roles to any domain controller in the enterprise. Because the roles are present in multiple domain controllers, that's why we call it FSMO roles. These FSMO roles are Schema Master, which is one per forest, Domain Naming Master, that is also one per forest, RID Master, that is one per domain, PDC Emulator, that is also one per domain, and Infrastructure Master, that is one per domain. Now let's discuss about the FSMO roles. So if you are attending the interview, the interviewer can ask you about the FSMO roles in detail. So one of the question can be, what is schema master and how to check the schema master role in the domain controller? Which domain controller is holding the schema master role? So schema master is managing the read write copy of the Active Directory schema. Now what is schema? Schema is the attribute of the objects. For example, if user is an object, then password, role, designation, employee ID, these are the attributes. By default, the forest domain first domain controller you install in your forest is your schema master. So now one more question can be asked, that how to check that this domain controller is holding the schema master role. So in this exercise I have already installed the Active Directory domain services role in this server and I am using Windows Server 2016. So I will quickly show you the domain here. So this server is computer name is dc, full computer name is dc.test.com, domain is test.com. This is Windows Server 2016 data center edition operating system. And now what I am going to do this, first we need to uh, go to command prompt and we need to type on command to register the schema management DLL. So we need to type reg svr32 space schm mgmt dot dll, then press enter. DLL register server in schm mgmt.dll succeeded. Now you open Microsoft Management Console MMC. Here you go to file, click on add remove snap-in and add Active Directory schema snap-in. Click OK. Let it load. You can see that if you then click on the Active Directory schema pane from the left hand side pane, then click on Operation Master. You can see that current schema master online dc.test.com. So this, we have only one domain controller in our forest. So, and this is the first domain controller in our forest. So the first domain controller will be holding the schema master role. So this domain controller is holding the schema master role for this example. So click on close. Now the next FSMO role that I am going to discuss is domain naming master. So this is also very important question that can be asked in the interview is, what is domain naming master? So domain naming master is responsible for verifying domains. Suppose if you want to create a brand new domain in your forest, then this role will ensure that there is no such domain already exist. Now interviewer can ask you, suppose if your domain naming master is down, what will happen? Then you have to answer that then you can't create a new domain. If domain naming master is down, then you can't create a new domain. And one more thing is, most of the companies prefer to have schema and domain naming master in same DC. Now I will show you how to check that which DC is holding the domain naming master. So let's go to search and type MNC to open the Microsoft Management Console, then go to file, then click on add remove snap-in, then add Active Directory domain and trust. Domains and trust is selected, click add, then click OK. Then on the left hand side pane, select the Active Directory domains and trust and right click and click on Operation Master. Then you will see that domain naming operation master role is dc.test.com. So this is the only domain controller in our forest. So this domain controller is holding the domain naming master. So this is how you can check that which domain controller is holding the domain naming operation master role. Now, the next question can be asked in the interview is what is RID master? So we need to remember that every security principle is associated with a security ID or SID. We have well-known SIDs. For example, everyone is S-1 hyphen 1 hyphen 0. This is the SID of everyone. Now, for creator owner, the SID will be S-1 hyphen 3 hyphen 0. This is for creator owner. Now, for local system, the SID will be S-1 hyphen 5 hyphen 18. This is for local system. For administrator, it will be S-1 hyphen 5 hyphen 21 hyphen domain hyphen 500. For this is for administrator. For power user, it will be S-1 hyphen 5 hyphen 32 hyphen 547. This is for power user. And so many other SIDs will be available. Now I will describe the pattern of SID. So SID always starts with S. Now I will open command prompt and I will type one WMI command. WMIC user account get name comma SID, then press enter. You will see that these are the name of the user account and these are the SIDs. So the SID always starts with S. Then the version start with 1. Then identifier authority value. Then the domain identifier or the 3 unique sub authorities. Then the last portion is RID or relative ID. This RID is unique and this differentiates other objects in the Active Directory. Now there is an issue is suppose one system admin creates an user and at the same time another system admin creates same user from some other location. There will be a conflict then. Now to avoid this conflict, what RID master does is it will assigns blocks of 500 of RID to each domain controller. So for example, DC1 gets RID from 1 to 500. DC2 gets RID from 501 to 1000 and so on. When a domain controller runs out of RID, then it contacts the RID master and RID master assign another blocks of 500 RIDs. Actually, RID is responsible for ensuring that every SID is unique. So, this is all about RID master. Now, I will show you how to check the RID master role on a domain controller. First, go to Windows Search and type dsa.msc. In our case, our domain name is test.com. So right click on the domain name and click on Operation Masters. Then you will see that RID tab. Under RID tab, you will see that Operation Master role is dc.test.com. So this is the only server, this is the only domain controller in our forest. So this server is only holding the RID master role. The next the next FSM role that I am going to discuss is PDC Emulator. PDC Emulator. So PDC stands for Primary Domain Controller. Now we don't have PDC, Primary Domain Controller. Earlier we had Primary Domain Controller and other domain controllers were backup domain controllers. Password change were happening in the primary domain controller. Today, password change, time sync, authentication requests, managing group policy objects, all are done by PDC emulator. Suppose an user password is expired and he reset the password. Then that user logs into another site and that site contacts a different domain controller for authentication. There is a chance that authentication will fail because if the password replication didn't happen in this domain controller, so to avoid this problem, PDC emulator actually handles this password change. Client will always contact PDC emulator for login fails to check that the password is changed. All account lockouts also processed in PDC emulator. The next functionality is time sync. Kerberos is used for AD authentication. The main task of this protocol is to check that while packets are transmitted at the authentication, it should not be tampered. So what Kerberos does here is if server clock and client clock time difference is more than 5 minutes, then Kerberos won't authenticate. PD simulator is the master clock for all the domain controllers. All the domain controllers sync its time to PD simulator. If PD simulator is down, then there will be security concern and there will be password attacks. Now I will show you how to check the PDC emulator role in a domain controller. Again you go to Windows search and type dsa.msc. Then again select the domain test.com here for our example. Then go to PDC tab. Then you can see that dc.test.com. This is the operation master which is holding the PDC emulator role. Now, the next question that can be asked in the interview is what is infrastructure master? What is infrastructure master? Okay. First thing is infrastructure master is only useful if and only if we have multiple domains in our forest. If we have only one domain and only one forest in the environment, then infrastructure will sit idle and it won't do anything. Infrastructure master will keep tracks of all objects across the domains. Suppose if any user wants to access any resource like file share or folder or printer etc from a different domain, then infrastructure master will decide which object belongs to which domain. Suppose we have domain 1 and domain 2. If an user from domain 1 is added to a group in domain 2, then infrastructure master will maintain that record and it will make sure that cross domain objects are working properly. So here one more important point that we need to remember is that, and this is important for interview also, that we should not place infrastructure master role in a domain controller which is also a global catalog server. Normally we make every domain controller as global catalog, but if we have selective domain controller where global catalog role is there, then if we put infrastructure master role in it, then infrastructure master role will not function because global catalog holds the partial replica of all the objects in the domain. And if we put infrastructure master role also, then global catalog will take the precedence and we will see authentication issue in cross domain environment. One more recommendation is, if we have domain functional level Windows Server 2000 and R2 and above, then we have an option to enable AD recycle bin. If AD recycle is disabled, then infrastructure master will play its role as usual. But if we enable the AD recycle bin option, then infrastructure master will sit idle and all the domain controllers will keep track of all the objects for addition, deletion and or modification. So this is the role of infrastructure master. This is how you have to answer in the interview. Now, again I will show you how to check the infrastructure master role in domain controller. Again, you can go to search and type dsa.msc. Then you can select the domain, right click on the domain, click on operation master, then go to infrastructure tab. Then you can see that operation master is dc.test.com in our example. Now there is one more command that we can use to check the FSMO roles in our domain controller. Now you can go to search, Windows search, type cmd to open the command prompt. Now type dc space slash test colon no s of role holders space slash v. You can see that we have got some results, and you can see that role schema owner is this server dc.com, dc test dc.com. Role domain owner is same, the dc.com, test.dc.com. PDC owner also test.dc.com. RID owner and infrastructure owner, update owner. So you can type this command to get the details of FSMO role in domain controller. Now I will discuss some of the very important interview question that can be asked in the interview. So let's begin. So the first question that can be asked in the interview is, if schema master is down, what will happen? So if schema master is down, there won't be any effect on the user. If administrator wants to modify the schema or install any application that needs schema modification, that will be affected. So next question is, if domain naming master is down, then what will happen? If domain naming master is down, there won't be any effect on the user also. Only problems will happen is if administrator wants to add, remove or modify any domain, then there will be an issue because domain naming master is responsible for adding, removing or modifying domains in forest. The next question that can be asked is what will happen if RID master is down? If RID master is down, we still can create the objects like users, groups, etc. till the time RID pool is over. Next question is what will happen if PDC emulator is down? If PDC emulator, which is primary domain controller emulator, is down, then time synchronization will not happen with PDC emulator. All other domain controller will maintain their time locally, but they can't sync their time with PDC. You won't be able to open group policy console. You won't be able to add or remove DFS namespace. You can't add any trust in domain. Suppose a password change request reached to PD simulator and after that PD simulator goes down, then that password update request will be processed and if user tries for authentication, it will be succeeded. The next question is if infrastructure master is down, what will happen? If infrastructure master is down, if you are working in single domain environment, then there won't be much problems. But if you are working in multiple domain environment, then you will see errors like authentication, group membership, permissions and lot of things. So in this case, if infrastructure master is down for significant amount of time, then we have to seize or transfer the role to another domain controller immediately. And one more thing is, if infrastructure master is down for users, then they won't see any errors, but for administrator they will see errors.